Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate the opportunity today. I'm Reid Jackson, in case you couldn't tell from the hair difference between John and I. We still go to the same barber. Really happy to be here today. This is one of the first events for GS1 US joining into the Beta SMB Institute, and just want to thank Dave Walker and team for the opportunity with this. So, John, if you don't mind, just give a quick background for yourself. You have a really unique background and how you got started. You're a quote unquote born entrepreneur. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit more about your background, how you got started into this?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I got started simply because I wanted to do house flipping, and I purchased a house, and it was supposed to get fixed up, and then I was going to flip it and make all this money. And well, that didn't happen. And I was working on a regular old 9 to 5, and suddenly I got stuck with a second mortgage. So I had to come up with something, or I was about to go bankrupt. And I literally had started filling out the bankruptcy paperwork. I sat at my kitchen table, and a friend of mine, had told me about, selling things on eBay. And I started selling used books on eBay. And long story short, within 4 years, I was 100% in my own business. And I did that in 2004 and haven't looked back. So literally almost 20 years in the business here.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the QR code stuff here. I mean, my background is more of IT, 25 years in IT, working for manufacturers, selling products and solutions and stuff. And 3 years ago, I got this opportunity, and one of my old bosses at Cisco System called me up and said, "Hey, there's this opportunity with a friend of mine over at GS1 US." And I was like, "GS who?" And, looked it up. Long story short, fell in love with the people and, just the mission of what's doing. And it's really about helping industry, right? So, and let me just share my screen here just really quickly, so that we make sure we cover off and I keep all the lawyers happy and everything. But we do follow antitrust caution and antitrust laws at GS1. We're not going to talk about price or anything today. We're not going to talk about anything proprietary or anything like that. But we will get into talking about QR codes and the advantages and differences and all of that. So, I mean, GS1 it's a not-for-profit organization that's global. And I work for GS1 US, there's GS1 Canada and GS1 Mexico, and then there's our global office, and we're kind of a federated group, but we're one of the largest standard organizations that no one's really aware of. We're the governing body for the UPC, or your Universal Product Code, which was started 50 years ago by a bunch of grocery executives that got together and said, we really need to reduce the line in our grocery stores at the point of sale. And I think we can do that with the use of barcodes, right? So one-dimensional barcodes that came about. So that's how we kind of came about. And fundamentally, GS1 does three things. We identify companies, we identify things, and we identify locations. And you think of it as a check registry, to be able to go back to it. So John, you and I were talking in prep for this and just getting to know each other. And you talked about this fear of QR codes. Talk to me a little bit about that. It kind of surprised me because I don't think of it that way.
Well, I think it's more, the technology. It's just considered a new tech, even though it's not new. It's been around a lot. I mean, the emergence, in the last year has brought people to the awareness of, at least here in the U.S., worldwide, it's been pretty much accepted. And I think a lot of small and medium business owners are just a little bit cautious about the technology simply because they don't necessarily understand either the need for it or the benefits of it. And so there's a little bit of hesitancy to jump all in on QR codes because, hey, I built my business without it. Why do I need it? Kind of thing. But that's kind of what goes on a little bit.
It's very interesting. I actually have my in-laws in from out of town and visiting for the week, and we were having breakfast this morning. And funny enough, mother-in-law, she was asking me about Bitcoin, right? And just this fear of all these things. And I kind of see this as a similar kind of conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's the uncertainty, it's the doubt, is it going to be expensive? Is it going to be complicated? What do I need to do with it all? I just want to share my screen again here really quickly, just so we're kind of level setting for everyone here. And so I just have a couple of different examples of barcodes up on the screen. And you can see the ones on the left-hand side highlighted in yellow, UPC A and EAN. These are one-dimensional barcodes. These are the traditional things you see on this packaged goods when you go to the grocery store or the retailer. This is what we call a one-dimensional barcode. And a UPC is a specific type of barcode that's going to be used within retail. Now, the ones on the right-hand side are what we call 2D barcodes. And if you look real closely, they're actually different. We have a data matrix, we have a QR code, and we have a dot code. So we're going to be talking about QR codes today, but it can be used in other areas. This is a 2D barcode. Think of it as the next level of barcode. The fundamental advantage here is it carries more data, and you can do more with it. So, John, what are some things that you're doing with QR codes today that people may not be thinking of?
Well, one of the things that, in the e-commerce space that we're using these for, and I see a lot of SMBs using it for, is product information. All right. And it's not just like you said before, it was just that one dimensional where it could just tell me, okay, this is the product. It might tell me where the product was made. But now you can actually track a product from shelf to, delivery. And you can see the phases of that simply by tracking that code. So all of the single products that were before would have that one code, and maybe we'd be able to break it down by batch, but now we can actually break things down by the actual SKU, that single SKU and where it's going. So there's just, like you said, the two dimensions give us more data that we're able to track inside of the e-commerce life cycle of a product from manufacturing all the way to direct to consumer.
Right. And I find it as, we see these QR codes almost everywhere now. And as you said, in the United States, we're starting to see them more and more and more. But in Asia, they've been using them for a really long time. I mean, South Korea and China and Japan, you go to these countries and you see how they pay for goods using QR codes. In the United States here, I think where we saw that first was more around IoT devices. You'd get the new smart camera that you're going to put up for security, or you're getting, should we say, I think Ziggy's the new name, right? You can call Alexa Ziggy now. But when I say Alexa, it always dings in the background. But, programming them in these IoT devices was through a QR code. You'd hold your phone up to it and the QR code, and it had programming in it. I have a friend who, you talked about flipping homes. And it always looks great on television, and even the work you do, which I want to get more into, it looks great. Like I can do that too, but there's nuance to it. But he has a lot of Airbnbs, and he has a QR code as soon as you walk in for his Airbnb, and it gives you the Wi-Fi with the password and directions for the local establishments and such. And it's like this menu effect without even having an app. It just brings your phone to a website. So we're seeing the same thing for products, right? Which you kind of want to get into. And so, it's the world is our oyster right now once we move to this digital environment and not just this black and white 1D barcode that's providing minimal information. Are you hearing challenges from folks, or do you want to comment on that?
No, I was just saying, another thing is, that small square, and it can be as large as you want, and it can be pretty small. They don't take up a lot of space, right? The message in terms of that is always visible. So even when I am not ready to scan a code, or I don't have time to deal with that right now, but I want to capture it, I literally just take a picture of it and then I can use that later, right? The one thing though that I think that is really great is that the newer phones now, and the newer, well, not even the newer phones, but the newer apps, video apps and photo apps on the phone will recognize a QR code without having external software or apps that you need to load. So I think that is a big reason why we're seeing much more adoption in
Yeah.
retail.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So speaking of retail, we hear a lot, oh, I know GS1, you guys are the barcode people. And we kind of like that, right? Because we're associated most commonly with the UPC barcode, which is used over 6 billion times a day globally. But we actually are a lot more than that. And what's interesting is if you have a UPC, you're going to be generating a global trade item number. And it's just that we issue an item number, and the item number says who your company is and what your product is, and we put the two together and we create your UPC. The beauty here is if you already have that, you can then just enable that and push that into a QR code. You don't have to go out and get anything new. You just have to then program that number, that global trade item number, into your QR code, and then you can web enable it and do some really cool things. A couple of years back, we ratified a new standard by going to community, which that's how we do things, right? We don't come up with it. We go to industry. Industry comes together. We help collaborate and facilitate the meetings and such. But they vote on it and come to it. But we ratified a standard called Digital Link. And you can go to GS1 or just Google GS1 Digital Link. And it talks all about that, how you can take your global trade item number and put it into a QR code, and then start doing things like coupons or refunds, returns, recalls, right? Especially in the grocery industry, you have a certain number of people that are stocking the shelves all the time, and sometimes you have a recall and you got to take things off the shelf. Well, sometimes not everything gets taken off the shelf, but if it's programmed in, customer can take it, put it into their basket. They get to the checkout, whether it's self-checkout or it's, with a cashier. Once they scan it, they can get it. Oh, I'm sorry, this has actually been recalled, right? And we can't sell it to you. Or even better yet, you saw it on the news. You got a bag of lettuce. There's this big recall. I don't know if it's my bag of lettuce. With a 1D barcode, you can look it all up, but it's a bit of work, right? You have to go and do that. With a 2D barcode, boom, scan it right to the web, and it can give you this information. So some really cool things, that are happening that way. What are some challenges that you hear from your entrepreneurs, like, the fear of this, what are some other, beyond it's complicated? Are there other concerns that they have?
Well, like I said, do we need special software to get this thing up and running? It's still, most cameras do, but it's not recognized by all, smartphone cameras. That's still a little bit of a problem or a drawback. I think it's that you can only store text and numbers. So I can't store an image actually. I can definitely, so with text and numbers, I can direct traffic to any web page and then do that there. But, it'd be interesting to see where we're going to get when we can store text plus images in a QR code. So, I mean, there are some limitations, very minor in my opinion, but those are some limitations, concerns.
Now, the work that you're doing today, you're doing mostly consulting, correct?
Yes, consulting and coaching.
Consulting
I
to
still
coaching.
own my business, though. I still own the business.
Hey, multiple threads of income is what I hear everyone saying, right? You need multiple threads of income, right? Especially when you're filing for bankruptcy. I've been in that same point. So a little bit about my background. I said 25 years in IT. I did work for 2 startup companies where I was employee number 3, and we kind of grew it to a couple of hundred and moved on. I was with another one where I was employee like 80. That didn't do so well. And then I actually also started my own business. I took a large sum of my savings, started a business, bought computers, hired employees, did all of that stuff, and went 3, 4, 6 months without revenue. And the wife's like, hey, how's everything going? The holidays are coming up. We're going to be able to. So
Ugh.
I was taught a long time ago, if you really want to do the trick right, do it without a net. And it never made sense to me until I finally was in it, because if you have a net, you're going to fall into something. But if you have no net, you're forced to work through and get to that, get to that other side, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? Walking the tightrope. So back to the QR codes and the software and stuff. There is software that is required. Let's no bones about it. But depending upon the complexities that you want to move into, a lot of it is off the shelf. And that's what I love about today. I mean, here we are, it's 2021. We're in the second year of a pandemic, a global pandemic, not even a continental pandemic. It's global. It's affecting our supply chains. Everyone is panicking about the holidays right now with what's going on. But if it wasn't for the digital commerce environment we live in, I mean, think if this was 1988 or 1986 and this global pandemic happened and all the retail stores were shut down, I think we'd be in a pretty big depression right now economically. I mean, and I've had friends that have lost their business through the pandemic, and I'm not playing light of that. But at a macro level, the world is still spinning pretty good. And I think it's because of this digital environment. And when I look at companies like Shopify and the environment that they've created where I go online, I don't know how to code. I really just need to be asking some smart business questions. And they have all these apps to help us out along the way, to deal with the taxes, to deal with the shipping, to deal with conversions and other things. So I would encourage folks out there, you can even leverage GS1 US. We have a partner affiliation. We have solution partners you can go to because we're a technology agnostic organization. But I can tell you that the large retailers today have put a stake in the ground. And so they're calling it Sunrise 2027. And it's a bit of a global initiative so that by the year 2027, all retailers will be able to accept 2D barcodes at the point of sale. So when you think of all retailers, so you go to Target, most of them can handle it today. You go to Walmart, most of them can handle it today, their stores. But they have lots of stores and they have to roll it out everywhere. But then when you go to like a bodega in New York City or in the Bronx or something, or you have a small mom and pop store, I'm floored today because last weekend, my kids were at their sporting events and we're doing the thing. And you know how that goes for most of you out there. You're running our kids around everywhere. And they had pop-up tents to sell merch. Apple Pay. They're taking Apple Pay out in the open, today. So I would really encourage folks, look beyond it. And as one person told me a long, long time ago, I have no idea how the electricity gets to my laptop when I plug it in, but I know it goes through that wire and that's all I need to know.
And so QR, what you're basically saying is like the recognition of QR codes is it's like going to be hyper movement now.
So the conversations in the U.S. have, they've come. I mean, we're seeing it, as I said, in Asia. It's been around for quite some time, even in Europe in specific areas. But I just see that the value prop of the 2D barcode, which a QR code is, this 2D barcode is just, it's Gen 2, it's Gen 4, all built into one. It's just providing you a lot more flexibility. And I do hear the folks that say, oh, but it's only letters and numbers that I can put in there. But it points to URLs. you can get services, like you can contract paid for proprietary services, but they'll do location for you. So if you sell your product and, you know, maybe your product has a different wear and tear or feel or use in Maine versus Florida, because their climates are so different, right? And seasonality is so different. Once a person scans it, it leverages GPS and does different things and, you know, different pointers through the URI connections. And it makes a big difference. I mean, there's so much there to it. I know we're here to talk about QR codes, but you just got me thinking. So computer vision comes up a lot, right? And a QR code with our cell phones, it's actually a computer vision that's actually handling it through the optics and the camera, right? So it's some software that's built in that's doing it. And I've heard this saying that computer vision is the end of the barcode. There's no need. It's the pandemic, man. We're all working from home.
Yeah.
But I heard that computer vision was going to end the barcode. And I'm a huge fan of computer vision. It does so many really cool things. But what's interesting is the 1D barcode has had a 50-year lifespan so far in retail. 50 years. That in technology, you don't hear of that anymore.
Right.
I mean, CD players had a 10-year run before MP3s took them away, and they had a 5-year run before that changed and the whole music industry, you know, went away. Record players had an 80-year run before they were even threatened by anybody else, and that was the cassette tape and the 8-track tape and those things. And then they had about a 25-year run before they were. So having a 50-year run, it's not going to go away. And all of this isn't going to go away overnight. But the 2D barcode, because you have so many different things, you know, packaging, lighting, location, durability, it's just this, like you said, it can be very big. I've seen it on the back of cars. There was one at the game this weekend, and it was just a QR code on the back of cars. So sure, I'd say 1 out of 5 people, oh, that's interesting, started scanning it. The younger generation, more and more, they look at a 1D barcode and they're like, I don't even know what that is, but a 2D barcode doesn't even have to have numbers or letters underneath it. And they're like, I want to know what it is. So it's more engaging. I find that in the retail space, and specifically the brands, I'll go that way. So we work with a lot of different brands here at GS1, and they come to us for just best industry practices and stuff. But it's about that user experience, that customer experience. It's you know, it's that image or that lifestyle or things, you know, where we all kind of want to have that fantasy look of it.
Yeah, it's funny, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but anyway, I'm at a event that somebody came in the conference room I'm in, and I'm walking through, and there's a guy. He's got a photo of, like, you know, his product launch that he's doing, and below it he's got a QR code on his T-shirt. Then on the sleeves he's got 2 QR codes, and on the back he's 360 promoting his product launch with QR codes. And people aren't really asking him what is the QR code. They're asking him, you know, what's the event? Because they know that it's starting to become ingrained in us that must be the URL. If I scan this, I can get more information. And I don't think a lot of people even know this. It's like inside of the Google browser, any website you go to, it automatically can spit out a QR code for that website, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's so easy to create, you know, these things and do it in such a unique manner, because you just see so many people doing it so many different ways, especially like you said with the 2020 and the pandemic. You know, I didn't want a menu. Don't hand me anything, because we were so freaked out, you know, we didn't know what was going on. And the way restaurants immediately adapted to that and it didn't cost them anything. And now when I go to restaurants now, it's still alive, even though, they're giving
Yep.
out paper menus or whatever, but you can sit at the table and still there. It's like you can do this or we can give you a menu kind of thing, or we
Yep.
can start ordering and be ready when the wait person comes to the table. So there's a lot of benefits for there's so many uses. I don't even think we tech guys sitting in the back room even know what the public is going to do with this as we move forward. It's just amazing what you can do.
So I think you just really crystallized it there. It is. It's exponential in terms of what you can do. I mean, when you look at like LinkedIn, I remember when we all had the Palm Pilots way back in the day, and you'd beam your information across with, the IR scanners and stuff. Well, now LinkedIn, it's like just boom, you put the QR code and they take a picture of it and all your information goes in. I'm seeing a lot more. I think what people are realizing is when they see a QR code, they know that there's multiple layers of information in it instantly, and it's typically web enabled, right? That's their, what I call their Pavlovian experience, right? Like Pavlov's dogs that would hear the bell and start drooling because they knew they were going to get fed. And it's that Pavlovian experience now for the younger generation, I mean, which is where we should all be focused, right? I mean, this is all of our upcoming customers, except for in real niche places. But even so, I think it's spanning generations because they're like, oh yeah, honey, like my in-laws again, my mother-in-law tell my father-in-law, just scan that thing. That's the new barcode. Just scan it. It's like, what do you mean scan
I
it?
mean, and so how do you see this changing payments?
Hmm. So I'm not a payment expert, and I just want to put that out there right now. But in Europe and specifically in Asia, specifically China, they do majority of their payment right through it. So it's encoded and it can be encrypted, and so that it has all of your information in, you preload it in, and then it expends it out, and then it's using it. You know, without getting really geeky and nerding out here, what this QR code is a data carrier. That's
Right.
what it is. It's another form of ones and zeros. We all know that ones and zeros run computers, and now we have quantum computing coming out, so we have qubits and qberts and all this stuff. Let that off the other way. But a QR code is it's a data carrier, like radio frequency identification or RFID. It's a data carrier, and this is it. And you can have sound as a data carrier. A lot of IoT devices are actually programmed because there's no line of sight. It's behind a thing in a wall or it's around a corner or something. But we can put low frequency information out there in frequency waves, just like light waves, right? Like we all want fiber optic at home for our cable, right? And it's not the coax cable. We want the fiber optic. Well, one is using sound and the other one is using light. And that's the difference of sending. It's sound waves, light waves, and just that refabrication. So this is just that. And I think that for me, it's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's like, what the heck is that? It looks like one of those, abstract art that I just not really getting. A landscape is nice for me. I like that. But this, you look at it and some folks are like, why? But very powerful and very flexible.
I've seen now some really amazing QR codes. If you can digitize an image, right, to do just the black and white dots and blank spaces, you can incorporate that into a QR code. So I happen to see one for Diddy, and it's his
Oh,
face.
really?
Yeah, and it's got Diddy at the bottom, but it's a QR code that's scannable. Now, the thing is, if you didn't know that was a QR code, you wouldn't automatically pull it out and so that's the kind of adoption we're going to need when we recognize there's a digital image that we can probably scan that, like you're saying, would you say it was a computer vision, right? And then you get the data that comes from there. But yeah, I'm seeing certain brands starting to play with it. And of course, it's they use colors in the code, so it's not. That's, I think, was the most unique thing about it. It wasn't black and white.
Right.
It had
Right.
orange and green, but I see that becoming really cool going forward as well. And then you mentioned, um, Bitcoin. I'm a big Bitcoin person. That means I'm a billionaire, okay? And you're not. Okay, I'm teasing. But, I play around with the Bitcoins. But if you want to move Bitcoins from place to place, it's got a very long number and,
It's a string.
stream, right? But the QR code makes it easy to transfer that back and forth simply by scanning that or sharing your QR code with others for the deposits or the transactions. So
Yep.
it's got a lot of good uses, and I
Yeah.
don't see that going away.
So it's funny you bring up the Diddy, Puffy Combs, right? Right. He went by like 4 or 5 things back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
So the picture. So way back when I used to have a hair dryer and a comb and part my hair and be a nice young fellow, I was working for Xerox. And everyone knows Xerox, it's like tissues and Kleenex and, Kodak and pictures and stuff. It was just, I was selling copiers and I moved into network printing, right? So it was like high-end network printing, but this was back when the internet really wasn't even a thing. Like, I think we had like 3 terminals in the office that had email. Nobody else had personal email just yet. It was that long ago. But the Park Research Center, Palo Alto Research Center, they call it Park, still around today. It's out in San Jose, Santa Clara type of area. And a lot of people don't realize this, but they created Windows, the mouse, email, all of these things, way back in the day. They had this thing called a data glyph. And a data glyph could be as small as a postage stamp. And it could look just like a postage stamp, like, Queen of England on it or whatever you have, and George Washington. But with using a camera, it could actually program other devices. So exactly what we're talking about today, which is like 30 years later. The problem, which is what you brought up, and I don't know if people caught on to this, but I didn't know looking at the photo of Diddy that there was actually something I should be scanning and doing. And so there's a lot of creativity to that. And we talked about it wanting to be prettier and all these types of things. But the fact that it looks like it does, the QR code specifically looks like it does, like you can tell, here, I'll just share my screen here again, because I'm looking at it. Come on, Mouse. I just want to share my screen here again. Come on. Too many things.
There it is.
Okay, good. So the QR code and the data matrix, they're different. They look different. I mean, the one in the middle is the QR code on the right-hand side, and the one to the left is the data matrix. And you can see those 3 bigger squares out there. But you start to recognize what these are. Just like when you look at a barcode, you're like, oh, okay, that's a barcode that I don't need it. It's not for customers. Right? It's not for customers. It's for computers and for scanners and stuff. I think what's happening now is that people are seeing the QR code and saying, that's for me. It has lots of different bits of information in it. It's more than just product ID. Because the UPC, the Universal Product Code, was product ID, right? And that's what GS1 does. We issue unique identification for companies, products, and locations. And we do that. And that can be embedded into a QR code, but it doesn't have to be in the QR code, other things that are there. But when you start to look at, like Amazon, you were an Amazon bestseller, weren't you?
Yep.
Top seller. Are you still do you still have some?
Yeah, we're still on Amazon.
Yeah, still doing those things. Okay. So how do you deal with fraud on Amazon or even some of your other marketplaces where it's like, hey, you know what? This John Lawson guy, he's really sharp. He's really cool. And I see what he's doing over there. I'm going to do the exact same thing and pretend that I'm John Lawson and I have his products and I'm going to sell them on Amazon and I'm going to steal, I'm going to undercut him. How do you deal with that?
It's a constant, it's a whack-a-mole game.
It is very much a whack-a-mole game.
Yes.
So, I'm going to take you a step backwards. And you and I were talking earlier about, you know, your Colder Ice Media and how you came up with the name, which is a really cool story and probably for another time. But you mentioned that you couldn't get John Lawson URL, you know, like you wanted. But why is the URL so important to you? I'm just curious, you know, like.
Well, I mean, at the time, you know, at the time, you just want to, it's almost like putting your stake in the ground and claiming your area.
It's your badge.
You know.
It's your badge.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your brand. It's your brand, right?
Yes.
So in this digital commerce environment that we're all in, it's getting a lot more ubiquitous and fluid. Right? It used to be, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you are much more an expert on this than I am, because I haven't walked half of the mile that you've walked in this digital commerce space with selling on eBay, selling on Amazon. I'm going to assume you probably have a Shopify
own store, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Your own store, right? But it's been a journey and it's an evolution, right? We started here. This is the way to do it. Then we went to this marketplace, but then I wasn't getting this. So therefore, I mean, Shopify's growth is, you know, through the roof and what they're doing because people are seeing these opportunities. But you had a URL, but now your URL isn't always directly connected to your product, right? Your product is selling on your storefront, your product is selling in eBay, and your product is selling out on other marketplaces, Amazon and others. Where we're seeing people really start to get this, because I've had some folks, we've been in a lot of conversations. Like I said, we bring industry together. We do a lot of best practice sharing and a lot of conversations. And we've had this conversation where it's like, well, wait a second, you know, I don't need a UPC because I'm doing direct to consumer. So I don't want to buy an identification system or jump into that because I just do direct to consumer. But in this digital environment, you just talked about the whack-a-mole, having a unique identification for your product is like having a URL, but it's for your product and it follows your product everywhere it goes in any platform, right? Then having the QR code with your identification put into it, your global trade item number put into that, and now webified customer care, coupons, events that are happening, just new marketing, touch bases, paid for proprietary services to see where and when they're scanning my product. They were in Target, scanned my product. They were online at home, scanned my product. You know, they were in different places. So you start to get feedback information that's happening on this. I'm like getting, something happened at work because my chat just went and it was getting interrupted. So I wanted to put it to a do not disturb.
Don't disturb us.
Yeah, we're having a good conversation here. So
yeah, let me ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you about. Do you? And we didn't even talk about this, but do you know about the difference between a static code and a dynamic code? So it's like once I put it on something, can I change it, or can I change where it moves, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I am not an expert on this, but I'll explain it as the best I can and how I understand it. Okay, because that does require programming and it does require some type of landing services. So you have to think of when you hit this barcode, what's happening is your phone is leveraging its internet connection. Okay. And then it's pulling that information from a server someplace, okay? You have some type of landing page or redirection server that's doing it. And depending upon what services you've signed up for or, you know, how your solution partners helped you set this up, it can be static or it can be dynamic, okay? And you can pivot between the two. Depending upon your use case, level of expertise varies, right? Depending upon the use case you're doing. But I'll give you an example. Use a QR code, go to the grocery store, grab a bag of lettuce, QR code on it, scan it through at checkout. I'm done. That's it. I just used it for that. They're using it to do inventory counts. But now there's a recall. Put a message into the system, updates the system, scan it, says you can't sell this.
Okay.
It's recalled, right? So there's your dynamic right
That's
then
dynamic. Got it. Yeah.
You know,
Makes sense.
You can also, if you're doing marketing and advertising and you know, this, what I call the customer experience thing, and you're doing it seasonally, you know, like I'll be the first to raise my hand. I like to have a beer beverage, you know, and we're in October, right? So it's Oktoberfest type of beers, right? And in the summer, I like the lighter beers. And so your same brand is pushing different things out to you. So if you have like cosmetics, it's, hey, do you have SPF for the winter? Because it's just as important as the winter as the summer. The only difference is the time of day is a little bit shorter, but the sun still does what the sun does. So it's reminding people, it's staying connected, you know, to them. It's also, you can get, some folks get really creative here and tie it to their CRM systems. So if you opt into an app or you opt into other things, and when you scan it, it's like, oh, hi, John, I see you're back looking at our products. This would go great with some of the other ones we already have. And they're automating these systems within it, you know, like an automated chat bot. It's just really an if-then question. So if this, then that,
yeah.
push it forward.
Brilliant. Okay. See, I got some insight that I wasn't expecting. There you go, guys.
Listen, you just made my day. If I help John Lawson out with some of this, that's really cool.
That's good.
I know we've kind of gone through a lot of the stuff. I know we wanted to leave some time for questions. So I don't know, Heather, if we have any questions that are out there.
We had an earlier question, but I think you guys covered that about putting it in different shapes and replicating logos for QR codes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so right now the QR code is that square. I mean, you can embed it into different areas and you can kind of hide it into things, but it is that square for the QR code today.
Okay, so let's go in and just like if they want more information, you know, GS1 wise or what you guys are doing, where can we follow up, Reid?
I really appreciate that. So GS1 US.org. You know, like I said, we're a not-for-profit organization. There's GS1.org, and that's our global office. It's a little bit different if you're going to get more service. In the U.S., we service 25 different industries. We have over 300,000 members. The lion's share come from retail, grocery, and healthcare. That's our lion's share of customers coming, and it's everyone from the Walmarts and the Targets down to the mom and pops. We do a lot with small, medium businesses, and now we're even creating a group more focused on what I call micro businesses. True mom and pops, and a micro business might be something I'm starting up for the weekend for an event that's happening. And then I'm going to do other different events that are happening. And then I want to start this business and I don't know where I want it to go and kind of drive on. But yeah, GS1US.org, and you can go to our website and find tons of information.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm done. Are y'all done?
I got two things I want to leave people with. Right?
Good.
And this is not related to QR codes, but in talking to you, preparing for this, and then listening to today's conversations, you know, small and medium businesses and entrepreneurs are what make the world go round. We all know that. They're the lion's share of, you know, products and taxes and the foundation of our economy here in the U.S. specifically. And I've done it. I've been there. I've been to that point where it's like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to file for bankruptcy, or, like, what am I doing? And it's the fear of failure. And I always encourage people, failure is an acronym. It's the first attempt in learning, right? So fail, first attempt in learning. And I was a long, long time ago, and I use it every single day, is that Henry Ford's famous quote: if you believe you can or can't, you're right. So believe in yourself.
Awesome. And guys, I'm just going to leave you with the simplicity of recognizing, if you didn't think about it before in 2019, I think 2020 kind of really sealed it for us, is that there is no separation between e-commerce and commerce anymore. It's all electronic, right? And these components, one of the things about the electronic business is that it's constantly in flux and it's moving forward. It hardly ever moves backwards. It's always moving forward. And when you get in front of things like this QR code thing, you are going to have an advantage for a time while everybody else is catching up. So take a little bit of time, do some research, figure out how you can start implementing some of these things we've talked about on a small, just take a little step in and lean in to the technology, because at some point it's going to impact your business.
So one more question before you guys go. It said, can you talk to us without detailed backgrounds about creating the QR codes that we can save and use in our advertising materials?
So we always here at GS1 US, we always would defer to our solution partner programs and the companies out there that provide those services. We're not a service provider in that aspect or anything. So I would really lean on them. There's lots of really cool companies out there, and you can even go to our site and our partner site and look at those. But even just researching them on Google, what I love about today is, my kids are growing up in this YouTube generation. And for me, I'm a visual learner. You can give me a book, I'll read it, but I'm not going to retain it like I would if I saw the video. And it blows my mind how creative young entrepreneurs are and how they're leveraging technologies. Because back in the day, you would need a big influx of money and a lot of time to test things out and to get things going. And today they're doing it quickly. What's the big deal right now if you had a QR code and a barcode right next to each other, but you just start to getting your data feedback and to realize when you can move forward on it. And that's what companies are doing. You're seeing it like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has the barcode. They have their own proprietary little code that they have out there for their app and things, and they're using QR codes on their packages. So it's just an example, but I wish I could give you definitive, but I haven't done it myself.
I can. It's like, look, like you said, go to Google, type in how to create a QR code. Should be one of the top ones is something QR-code-generator.com. And you can literally put in a website URL, press the button, it'll spit out a QR code that is usable for any website that you want to use it for. So that's great for if you want to just drive people to your landing page. That's what you can do. You want to drive people directly to a product page. You can use a unique QR code like that, So there's a whole lot, like he said, for your V cards, you can turn that into a QR code. So when you in networking with people, you can have this QR code that comes up, hey, scan this, get my information. All kind of places, but very easy to do just by Googling, for real.
Again, Reid, John, thank you so much for being here with us at Small Biz Aid today.
Thank you.